Okay, can you hear me at the other end, Lynn?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We have you on the speaker here, so we can hear you loud and clear. So I'd like to give you a very warm welcome to Project Little Task here in Stroud. And we've got a gathering here, watching on a big screen, and we have a few people signed in as well. We may get a few other people joining in as we go along. So,
well, welcome.
okay, and I have your presentation loaded, so if you can just tell me when to, if you want to.
Okay, well, why don't we get this party started? Well, good evening, everyone. As you can see, my name is Lynne Taylor. I wanted to thank you so much for your outreach to have me come and speak to you via Zoom. I do hope that this will give you some information that you need to help protect your families, because whether we're in the United Kingdom, the United States, or somewhere else, the attacks on our children, the attacks on our families are becoming so commonplace that we're really struggling for what to do and how to protect each other. And so it's wonderful to have groups like this where we're like-minded and can work together no matter how far apart or close we are. So thank you so much to Rhonda and Jane and Dave and everyone else who has helped put this together. Thank you so very, very much. And with that, Dave, let's go ahead and get started. You'll notice that tonight's presentation is called Mind Grabs. And that is something that is going on in our governments. It is trickling down to we the people. So, exactly what is MINDSPACE? Because this is something I don't know if you as British citizens have heard of this particular program or not. I've done extensive research into it, and basically it is the federal government saying, okay, we expect this sort of behavior out of our citizens. And what we're seeing is that it's being used over, let's see here, from resources like this. This is called Brainwash. And this was written by a British person. His name is Dominic Streetfield. And he was able to get into classified military documents, both from Britain and from the United States, to say, okay, here's how the military is using psychology to groom people to do what they want. But then our governments decided, well, you know, we're going to do the same thing with our general public. So that's what MINDSPACE is doing. Basically, it's passed off as a United Kingdom effort, but through my extensive research, I've been able to find that a lot of the information came from here in the United States and through higher academic institutions as well. Several countries are using this kind of mind grooming against their citizens. Australia, Spain, Germany, France, and of course the United States and the United Kingdom. I'm sure there are other countries as well. It also will use nudges. Now this would be something that we could relate to with Pavlov's dog, remember, reward and punishment, grooming, that sort of thing. All right, it is to attack your freedom of speech, your freedom of critical thinking, your freedom to conduct your life in the way that you would like to, and replaces it with the government going, well, we think you'd be a better citizen if you A, B, C, and D. This is actually destroying our families and relationships, especially when education comes into the mix. And it also is going after our representative government, because we can't be a good member state of the United Nations if we're free will thinking people. We have to conform. And of course, I just brought up the United Nations. This does relate to the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, the basis for MINDSPACE is based in criticizing you, marginalizing anyone who disagrees with the agenda at hand, no matter how big or small that agenda is. Everyone in society is fair game. Again, this goes back to the brainwashing or social justice, okay? Its roots are in narcissism, and the government will use this as fair game against you via public policies. So I just wanted to point that out. All right, so Dave, if we will skip the next slide and go straight into the one where we see the Sustainable Development Goals, please. Okay, now I just brought up the fact that that government is using nudging and things to prompt you into behaving certain ways. All right, let's go. Let's see. It should be the one where you see what the Sustainable Development Goals are sold as. That should be the one that I'm looking for. Well, if it's not there, it's not there. I thought I put it in. Okay, well, my mistake. I thought I put it in. Well, we all sing the Sustainable Development Goals. So, David, if you want to go back, let's just go back to the, yeah, we'll go back there. Okay, so you know what the Sustainable Development Goals look like. They're in the wheel, okay? They all have different colors. Well, here is what our governments are using, no matter if we're in the United Kingdom or the United States. Here are the colors and their meanings, and this is straight from the United Nations information. Yellow, it is supposed to bring about the mindset of being optimistic about something. It's used for clarity and warmth. So anytime your United Kingdom government is talking about anything that they want you to feel optimistic about, look for the color yellow. Orange, well, that's supposed to be passed off as something friendly. It's supposed to breed cheerfulness and confidence. Red, all right, that's supposed to bring about excitement. Anything that's youthful or bold, and this is why Sustainable Development Goal number 4, which is quality education, is clothed in red. All right? We have blue. That's supposed to bring about trust. So anything that has to do with the Sustainable Development Goals or your government agenda plans that carry with that, we'll use the color blue. Green is supposed to be peaceful. That is for growth or health. And then finally, gray or white, used in the wording for the Sustainable Development Goals, is going to be something that is to bring about balance. And this very definitely plays into, David, if you'll go back to the SEL with the purple freaky looking thing, if you'll go back there, please. All right, that is where, I think it's the next one, yeah. There we go, yeah. So this is how the Sustainable Development Goals are coming into not only British curriculum, but we've seen it in the United States as well. They're casting it off as well. You have to be a good collectivism thinker. Individuality doesn't matter that much anymore, so we're going to bring about character education or behavior education. It's actually attacking the attitudes, values, and beliefs of your families, because let's remember, we are all different. Our family values may be totally different than our next door neighbors, but in this particular agenda, that is not important. You have to think collectively. And the document that was written in Britain, Creating a Culture, this is by Tom Bennett. He was an independent reviewer of behavior in schools. He wrote an entire document for the British school system on how to use character education, reward and punishment, positive behavior interventions, which are going after the children's mental health states of mind. And so this is what we're seeing happen. And again, they're using color coding to help bring about rewards. I've seen this happen.
Recording in progress.
So that is what social and emotional learning is. Now, as far as how this will teach the United Nations collectivism to your students, it is telling them, okay, for example, number 1 is no poverty. Well, what that really means is you're going to own nothing just like everyone else. Number 2 is no hunger, which means you will eat little or nothing. Number 3 is good health and well-being. Well, your mental health is being tracked. Number 4, quality education. You'll be taught the Sustainable Development Goal skills only. Number 5, gender equality. There aren't any genders. Number 6, clean water and sanitation. That will be available to only those who conform. Affordable and clean energy. Again, only to those who conform. Decent work for all is number 8. And that is whatever you learned as your Sustainable Development Goal school and education, that would be your job. Number 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Well, your neighborhood is your prison. Number 10, reduce inequalities. Number 10 actually means it's going to be rulers versus subjects. Number 11, sustainable cities. Okay? You're spied upon everywhere you go in that city. Number 12, responsible consumption and produce. Rulers consume, but not you. All right? Climate action is number 13. Science is manipulated to rule you. Number 14, life underwater. No beach access for you. Number 15, life on land. Rulers own it, but you don't. Number 16, peace, justice, and strong organizations. That actually translates into tyrannical rule because there will be no peace and justice. And finally, number 17, partnerships for the goals. Every entity must conform. Now, currently, the International Court rules over each one of our areas in the world. And Western Europe and elsewhere are going to be in 3 different areas. This will include human rights. And according to what I have been defined in the British education system as well as in the United States education, this will fall under what is called human rights. So in 2019, UNESCO made a document on the rights of the child and said that some pornography was okay for children to learn. Now, that should raise a lot of awareness about what is going on with the gender bending that we're seeing all over the world. And we also know that the recent UN report decriminalizing all sex attacks is using a Hegelian dialect, and the International Court of Justice also uses that particular dialect. So, let's move on, Dave. Thank you so much. Let's move to the next slide, please. There we go. So, this is what it looks like from a research viewpoint, okay? You've got lots of stats there, and at the top you're going to see the socially responsible global citizen. Do you see anywhere in there that says the United Kingdom citizen or the British person or the American citizen or the American person? No, because globalism is going to be cheap. All right, you have internal outcomes and external outcomes. And anytime your government, I don't care if it's at a local, state, or federal level, anytime the word outcome is used in relation to people, it is a mandated prescription of who you are supposed to be in their eyes, not who God created you to be. So I just want to point that out, okay? This also will use behavior modification. This is loosely based on Berlin's 2 concepts of liberty. Now, if you don't know who Berlin was, 1958, he wrote some documentation. He was a political philosopher. His references included Karl Marx. He also preached positive freedom, which you were to be your own master. Or you could be a subject, which is not objective at all. He also said that you were not directed by external forces. Now, negative freedom would be the exact opposite. Coerced, enslaved, and curtailed. Now, Berlin's quote was, "The liberty of some must depend on the restraint of others." Now, tell me where we've heard similar quotes like that. Now, this is especially true when we see our governments using this not only in education, everyone, but in social and economic circles. Okay, we've seen this cast off as well in school behavior, because school behavior is being touted as it's inseparable from how Johnny and Susie perform in school. So because it's inseparable, it's now the school's business to micromanage. And especially since COVID has come around and we have to have all these safe schools. Well, it doesn't mean that it could mean that the building is safe physically, but this is more going after your attitude needs to be what is considered safe. Okay? All right, let's continue to move on. Some of the worst Americans in education were cited. Let me go back to this real quick. In creating a culture many of some of America's worst educators when it came to behavior grooming and mind control were cited in that particular document. So you're seeing this come to fruition in British schools, and you're wondering why. Well, that would be why. Okay? Let's move to the next one, please, Dave. Okay, hang on just a second before we go to that. Let me get to this. Now, this is a hub that is much like the Sustainable Development Goal hubs. This is an American model of what we've seen in Britain, where there is also a model that is very close to that in Tom Bennett's book. If you haven't seen it, it's on page 31. And instead of it showing you words, it's showing you faceless people, and they're all just in this one group, and it's telling you that the school is becoming the hub for every government service possible. Now, I don't know about in Britain how long that has been in place, but I know here in America, we are seeing it slowly come in more and more to the point they're now being called community schools, where you don't go to get academics, but you go to get health care, you go to get your job, your food, everything that the government can supply you, all right? So this is going to connect also to the UNESCO rights for special needs there in England, as well as the rights of the child. This will also bring in the World Health Organization, as well as using your universal credit system. Now, I was able to find that that is equivalent to our American welfare system. So watch how those funds come into your school and then what they dictate through your school. Okay? Let's move on, please. There is also, before we move on, I want to point out, like I said, there is a UK version of this hub. There's also an Australian version of this hub. And this also connects with the United Nations Mental Health Plan, where government dictates your mental state of mind, not you or your health care provider. So let's move on, please. And there is the UK model. This is from page 31, as I was saying. This is under creating social norms, or those social justice warriors that we're seeing so much about in behavior through our culture. Think Greta Thunberg, or however you say her name. She is a good example of the social justice minion with the bully attitude. And this is what our schools are creating. This is straight from some of your information that is available to you in Britain. Okay, let's move on, please. And there's the Australian. Notice it's not so much a hub, but it has all these particular arrows coming in. And let's remember the color coding of psychology. The blue is supposed to help build trust. The white is supposed to help bring calming. And the red is supposed to be youthful. Well, who are they attacking? The youth. That's precisely where all those arrows are going. And let's think about this. We're starting with our children younger and younger, well before some of these particular aspects of their development are even in full capability. So let's remember that. Okay, let's keep going. And there you have the Comprehensive Mental Health Action Plan given to you by the World Health Organization, and this is being backed by the United Nations. So it is telling you that you will have comprehensive mental health. Now, anytime we hear our governments use comprehensive, it means they're going to come at you with everything they have from every angle that they have. And because Britain is a member state of the United Nations, just like America, that means we're seeing some of the same things happen. Maybe not at the same time, but we're seeing the same things happen. All right, Dave, let's move on, please. Okay, and there were the particular pieces of information that I just read to you about what the Sustainable Development Goals are telling you and what they are really doing if you survive under their parameters at all. So we can go on from there, please. Okay, now, from the Department of Education there in Britain, and I wanted you to know that I did take the time to print out all this documentation. So when I did my research, and let me show you, I have that for you, let me show you. So I want you to know that I'm actually backing this up. It's not that I'm just sitting over here making up stuff. All right, so let's see here. This is the documentation right here. I know that it's going to say Heinz National Funding Formulas, curriculum planning relating for relationships, because I know that one of the questions that I had from some of the people in the group was, what are we doing about the sexual grooming of our children? That's where the curriculum would come in. So I just wanted to let you know that from the Department of Education there, as you can see, you have about 6,000 pounds per pupil. Now, this is for the new or growing special free schools that you have. You also have 49 billion pounds that are going to your schools for high needs and central school service blocks, which are including some of this behavior shaping and mind bending that Tom Bennett was talking about. Okay, you'll see the figure there for the hospital education, as well as the overreaches of your mental health and apprenticeships that we're seeing that were groomed in a Prussian education model, because it is going to force your taxation or your levies to continue to increase. We're having the same problem here in America as well. Okay? So I wanted to bring that about as well for you. This also will attach to the Ed and Skill Funding Agency that you have. This also goes on the individual learning record for your students. We also know that this will go into their education and health care plans and create incentives for behavior hubs. This is all in Tom's documentation, by the way. This is also in your Department of Education. This also uses a government-assigned office, Ofsted, O-F-S-T-E-D, to rate your spenders in education, as well as how your children should be shaped and how they should be thinking. So I just wanted to bring that up as well for you. And of course, this is going to bring about more mental health support teams until, let's see, this is set in stone for you guys. I believe it is. Started in 2017 and is set in stone until 2024 with room to increase should they see fit. Okay, let's move on, please. All right, again, Tom Bennett's creating a culture plays a large part in what the Department of Education there in Britain is doing. And as you can see, it targets behavior interventions. It's going to use the whole child mind manipulation set, because after all, we have to educate not just the brain, we have to teach the brain how to think. We have to teach John and Susie that even if they can't sit still in their seat, they must sit still, or they're going to be classified as someone who needs a behavior intervention. Of course, this goes back to the social and emotional learning, changing of the attitudes, values, and beliefs of the family, where the family is not so much important, but the school is. Okay? So, behavior should never be an assessment material item, but it is. It absolutely is. And you cannot put character into a box to be graded, but that's what we're seeing happen. All right, let's continue on, please. Okay, this is also from Tom Bennett's particular book. He will tell you here the use of public-private partnerships, which we know are fascist. Now, I do not believe that fascist is the nature of Britain. I didn't think it was the nature of America, but I'm finding more that our research, our nations are becoming more fascist than ever before. It uses policies, not laws, and policies here in America are interpretations of laws. And from what I was able to find, I do believe that is the same for you guys as well. Again, there are the Ofsted government-defined behavior standards, not the family standards. Of course, this will rope in your special needs students into that workforce preparation treadmill, because again, for the sustainable development goals to mesh with education and mental health, they have to all be interconnected. And if you'll remember, the Sustainable Development Goals teach only the sustainable way of life. The jobs will be sustainable ways of life as well. Okay? This will continue to use your Driver Youth Trust, UNESCO. We also know this will attach to the PISA, which is the Progress for International Students, I believe it is. This is from the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. Okay, there's PISA. It's the Program of International Student Assessment, sorry. Okay, that is aligned to Common Core, Career Tech Education, STEM, which is Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. Now, let me point out one thing about STEM. We've always had science, we've always had technology, engineering, and math. And the reason why this is such a booger, if you will, for a lot of people is because they'll say, well, then we need science, we need technology, engineering, and math. I don't argue it, but when it is funneled through the United Nations and the Common Core, because let's remember, it was UNESCO who got in bed with Bill Gates to create that One World curriculum. So it's funneled through, STEM is funneled through that lens. Now STEM is an acronym that the United Nations came to the National Science Foundation here in America and said, we want you to create a marketing tool. And because you're going to use this, and we're going to try it out about the same time the Common Core comes along, no one's going to be any the wiser. But there was one report that was published and given to then President Obama. And it was called the PCAST report, and that stands for the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. And in it, it said, and this is exclusive for America, I'm sure if we looked hard enough in Britain, we could find some of the same information, okay? But it was, we need to build a STEM education to create a STEM people with STEM jobs for a STEM economy for the greater global good. We're not building American education for American students, for American jobs, for American economy. We're not building British education for British economy, our schools, our students. We're doing this for the greater global good. That is one of the United Nations, the OECD, all the other alphabet soup organizations you can possibly think of. That is one of their wonderful phrases to throw us all in this together. Okay, let's move on. Well, we've already been talking about them quite a bit. So, let me point out to you that Alice Bailey, if you do not know this, was a Luciferian, and she was able to influence the United Nations early leadership to shift it away from this is how the world's always worked. Here's how we're going to manipulate the world to make it work. Okay? Now, I'm going to point out that connected to the United Nations, I've already brought this up, is the International Court of Justice. Now, member states, such as Britain, such as the United States, pay member dues. Everything that that particular court rules on has expenses for, are paid for through our dues. And by default, every United Nations member state is subjecting their country to the jurisdiction of this arm of the United Nations. The court can become mobile if it's needed, but it is presently housed in the Peace Palace at The Hague. And what we need to understand about that is that the Carnegie Foundation here in America owns that particular palace. And if you go and you find out who Carnegie is, he's had global influence over not just education, but healthcare as well. He was one of those progressive families, among one of those progressive families, who knew that America needed to be run as a business, not a nation. And we're seeing that happen in Britain as well. So, two types of jurisdiction that this particular court has over you will be any contention between any countries, and then second, advisory. For example, anything UNESCO has in Britain, that's where the international court will come in for you guys. Again, this will include your human rights, children, education, the sustainable development goals, the whole lot, okay? This particular report that the International Justice Commission, the Court of International Justice comes out with is published at the end of every July. So a brand new one will be out probably later this year, telling you what they do and how they're infiltrating each country. But a lot of this I didn't find in this document, it was only through research. Okay. All right, so what is so bad about Alice Bailey? Well, she is going to she wanted to reduce the parental authority over her children. And we've seen this happen. That's on the next slide, by the way, Debbie. Okay? Here she said, you break the communication between the parent and the child. And I'll have to say, our schools are doing a bang-up job with that. They absolutely are. Okay? Why would she do that? Because parents do not need to pass on Christian traditions to their children. We must liberate children from the bondage of their parental traditions. Okay? And as we can see, this will promote excessive child rights. We also know that this is causing a lot of dissension in our families as well. Okay? Let's move on, please. Okay, so the UN's goal, of course, was to remove God and replace it all with self and the world. Okay? Again, this is coming at us from top down. This is taking God and prayer out of the education system. This is replacing it with, well, the science is our creator. We need to worship the creation, not the creator. We need to not even worship anybody. You know, you don't need anybody. You're a God yourself. These are the attitudes that are coming with this social and emotional garbage, okay? Let's also remember that in the MINDSPACE documentation, this is also something that we're seeing, is that we have to replace worship with meditation. We have to be mindful of ourselves. We have to absolutely promote ourselves over anyone else. But yet at the same time, we have to be a good collective member. Not really sure how they try to justify those two being in the same realm, but it absolutely is. So let's keep on going, okay? We know that from the education department, the top-down approach will be sustainability, development goal compliance. You have to teach that all religions, all beliefs have to be aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. We're seeing that humanism and Gaia worship is taking over where Christianity and other religions were once solidly in place. Okay? So, let's move on, because we do have some more. Okay, and there is MINDSPACE, that is Brainwash, that is this particular book. And I wanted to read from you. This is a part out of chapter 6. And this is how education comes in to all this. Let me see if I can find where chapter 6 is. I have it marked, but then I have so many other notes in here as well. Okay, 178. I do apologize about that. Okay, let's see here. Okay. This particular chapter will tell you that we have vast arrays of marketing, either from our government or from advertising, that will put in messages that we never ever see. And I know that sounds like I'm probably smoking some dope, but I actually am not. But it's going to let you know that yes, mind control has been used on us for many, many ways and many times. And it's here that it's shaping the attitudes of 2 teens. And they have listened so long to the same thing that they now believe what started off as a lie, they now believe it, and they go and act on it. And in the court case that followed this, it tells you that music and books influence our children to massive actions, especially suicide. So if you see the uptake on suicide across the world, it's not necessarily because we're not paying attention to them or they're being marginalized so much as it is, what are they reading? What are they listening to? Who is telling them? What are they telling them? And without access sometimes to the curriculum, without access to what is being taught to our children, this is a huge thing. We need to understand what is in the book. And with the removal of textbooks in our classrooms and everything going online, it is very, very easy and has been proven to be done here in America as well as elsewhere. This is how the shaping of our children's minds is going. And there's actual psychological evidence out there that if you take a child's image of their brain before Common Core, before all this stuff started happening, before all the minding started, you'd see a wonderfully working child brain. You take a child who's in that system for at least 5 years, and some of the wrinkles that our brain needs, some of the nerve endings that need to connect to others literally are not connecting. We're doing this to our children, and we're saying, you know, let them go on to school, let them go through this. Yeah, we need that. No, this is really harming them, physically, mentally, and mindfully as well. Okay, let's move on, please. Okay, that's pretty much what I have for you. Now, this would be the time where if you have any sort of questions, any sort of comments, something that maybe didn't make a whole lot of sense, or maybe you wanted a little bit more information, this would be that time to do that. And if you don't feel confident in asking out loud, you can always email me, and I will be happy to address anything that you would like me to address.
Any questions? Anything?
If we wanted just to get that slideshow sent to us, just email that address.
Yeah, so Lynn, can you hear me?
Yes.
So somebody just said, how do we get a copy of the slideshow? Well, I have a copy here.
You have a copy, so you go for it.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah, you can go for it, absolutely. And it's, you know, it's an honor for you to take this information and to share it because, you know, while you may not have a large group tonight, you know that school is going to be starting, when does it start there?
Still going. Just finished.
Yeah, it's just, I think the term is just ending now, so they're just coming into
Oh, is it?
some
Okay.
holidays.
Okay. Okay. Well, I know the children here are out, and I think they start back in August. So I know we don't have much of a break left. But yeah, we know that schools will be starting up. And listen, this cycle is fully in place. And so, yeah, it's an uphill battle. But the encouraging part of this is you've got enough people there that you can pull together and make a known presence to come up against this, to go to whoever it is you need to go to and say, look, this is not right, this is not ethical, this is not legal.
I just have a question too. Is this also happening in private schools, you know? Or is
Oh
it...
yes, absolutely. Yes, and the reason why you know that it's going on not just in the public schools but in the private schools is because they're using the same I-States assessment, that PISA, the program for international student progress, that's one of them. There are several others as well. Any of those college entrance exams, I know what they are here in America. I'm not sure if you guys use the same ones or not, but I do know that those are tied to it as well. It has to be, because if you'll remember, when Bill Gates signed that agreement to create the One World curriculum, it included the assessments, and then he came out all cheeky and said, oh yeah, the assessments will drive the curriculum. That was a promise, and that's what's been happening.
we have one more question.
Yeah, I have one.
Yes.
You have to tell me you're not speaking because you
Right,
want me.
okay. There's clearly a percentage of children that cannot be manipulated. Do you know what percentage that would be? Because my 8-year-old son that I adopted was instrumental in unseating the headmistress at his infant school before I adopted him, and also getting rid of the MTA by standing up to them and what they were doing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Lady Is has an adopted son who would stand up to school headmasters and say, I'm pretty much saying I'm not taking any of this. So the question is there a percentage of children, do you know, that perhaps will resist this, brainwashing?
That's an excellent question, and I would encourage as many families as possible to, yes, resist this. And here's what's probably going to happen to them, okay? I know that you guys are not in the European Union anymore, but I do know that the EU came up with this, what's called youth guarantee. And if you weren't in school, you would be in some sort of training, whether it was college courses or job training, because they couldn't stand the 16 to 25-year-olds just being out on the street, okay? Why I bring that up is because I know that America's trying to implement something very, very similar, and I know that Britain is probably somewhere in the middle, because you can't have non-conformity. Everyone has to be a good member of society and compliant, and this is why I love that people want to stand up, because we need to stand up to tyranny. I mean, my stars in heaven, that's how we get somewhere. You know, Britain didn't lie down and take it when you were faced with tyranny to some degree. America, to some degree, has not laid down and take it. But we're seeing that the grooming that's going on is saying, yeah, take it, because you're not going to survive if you stand up to the system. Well, I say, you know what? Stand up and let's stand together.
Yeah.
David, you had your hand up for a question?
Thank you. Hi there. I don't know if you know me, but I'm author of a book called School No Place for Children.
Okay.
So I'm very keen to point out that while I agree with absolutely everything you've just presented, my remedy for that is simply not to stand up, but it's to stand up and walk away.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
There's no remedy in that system. It needs to implode, and the implosion must take place while your particular boys or girls are at a safe distance, because it's already getting very ugly with the transgender stuff, the hypersexualization, and it's so much simpler just to have many more millions away from school and in effect creating a prototype alternative social setup, community setup. Takes away a lot of the stress, and the more people that do it, the easier it will be and the more rewarding it will be. And some of the people that I know personally that have just removed their boys and girls from school are reporting that, I'll give you a crazy anecdote. There was a head teacher during the lockdown, where masks were being mandated, not at his school, because he was a rebellious type, but at his daughter's school. And him and his wife said, right, that's it, we've had enough, we're pulling them out of school, using the mask mandate as an excuse, as a kind of leverage. 2 years later, or 18 months later, I should say, after pulling the girls out of school, the girls were still asking for permission in their own home from their own parents to go to the toilet or bathroom, as you would say. And people who haven't got personal experience of this will find it very hard to compute and to believe that such tyranny is taking place. And it doesn't have to be complex, United Nations, top-down tyranny. It can be very, very simple. You can only go to the bathroom when we say so. In this school, you cannot say no and you cannot ask why. Well, this is intolerable and unacceptable. And now in this country, I can't speak for the US, we're now having riots in the schools, and the boys and girls are now rioting, and I fully endorse that and celebrate that, because that is a sign that children are waking up, and I just want to know what you have to comment on that.
Oh, David, thank you so much, and I would love to be able to find your book. I don't know if that's available here in America or not.
Oh, it absolutely is, and it has been for a long time.
Okay, well, when did you write it?
The ebook came out 2015, and the hard copy came out 2017, 2018.
Okay, awesome. I will put that on my get list then. But I just want to say I could not agree more. Thank you so much for what you've done to raise awareness, because you're right, we need to implode the system. It's the only way we're going to save our families. I will tell you that here in America, so watch for this in Britain, that due to the mass number of increase in homeschools or pulling the kids out of the system and educating them at home, the government is now coming up with ways through the healthcare system to come in and say, we need to come into your home and see how you're doing. If you're not educating the way we think, if you're not medicating the way we think, then we've got all these programs that we're going to hook you into so that you can be a good conforming family. And I'm saying no, absolutely not. We have got to protect our families. We absolutely do.
Well, can I just say that I'm going to take my educator's hat off and put my legal lawyer hat on. I used to be a lawyer, and I teach law as well, so my two worlds are coming together quite opportune, in a timely manner. What people have to be conscious of is their status. If they refer to themselves as parents and to their boys and girls as children, they are screwed.
Yeah.
And what they have to be, and this is what I teach on my course and the talks and presentations that I give around the country, including at Stroud, is that you have to know who you are and that you have total proprietary rights over your property. But you not only have to know that, you have to know how to stand on that. And the minute you meet the government halfway, you are screwed. You have to literally turn your back. You've got to, disengage completely, unless you really know how to engage. But then there's no point in engaging anyway, to be quite honest. And what's happening in this country, I can't speak for the US, is gradually home education hubs are sprouting up, and they're being mentored by people like myself in the fine art of turning your back on tyranny. And but the more of us that do it, the easier it can only get easier. It's not going to get harder.
Right, absolutely.
And the incentives to do it are just going through the roof. Putting a boy or girl through school now is a crime against humanity.
David, please tell us the name of your book.
School, I can put it as a link, if you just bear with me. It's School No Place for Children, and I can put it in the chat as a link, but that'll only do one or two of you any good. Bear with me.
Well, this is going to be shared, I believe, after, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, we're gonna put this out all over the place. So yeah, a couple of one person, I think.
Okay, well okay. In the chat box, I'm going to give you 3 links in one, 3 for the price of 1. So the UK Amazon link, the American Amazon link, and then there's a talk of the same name that I did 4 years ago at the Glastonbury Symposium, which is a symposium for free thinkers. And for those who don't like Amazon, they can go on my website, which is thepeopleswarrioruk.com, and buy it personally from myself. So you have options.
Very good. We like options. Okay, any other questions?
My son
Thank you.
my son is here, okay, and he's got my grandson, his son, who's 6, and maybe you want to just explain, this is what's going on in Stroud right now.
If you're adopted ones in the same school, in Stroud, I noticed in Canterbury.
Yeah,
Come forward, David.
Project your voice.
So
Is
basically,
it not
Ask her if she
right?
can hear you.
can you hear me?
Can you hear? Can you hear? No,
Just basically, it's just to confirm that everything that she said is happening, that my son's reports now have got behavioural assessment standards, but not in the way that he is an individual is in respect of his ability, but how he fits into the group classroom as a collective, and he's monitored on that, and then that in line with other achievements that he's assessed on like from his education, will then puts him into a bracket of whether he needs further special education, but it doesn't really define that. It's like, well, does he need assistance with his abilities intellectually, or is it to conform him to your set goals and standards?
Yeah, okay, so someone who has a son at school in Stroud has confirmed that the behavioural assessments are actually happening, and his ability or tendency to conform or not is reported on in a regular report on behavioural assessments, and there is some vagueness in terms of what needs to happen in terms of academic achievement.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Has any sort of therapy or medication been brought to the table?
Well, no, but sort of rather than assessing his actual academic performance, the main reports which came from the teachers all about behaviour.
There's nothing about
Nothing about, you know.
No, nothing about that. It's mainly about reports about behavioural assessments and his ability to conform
Okay.
to the way that they want the children to.
Right, okay, well, the danger with that is that means there's going to be a data record. And that can go well or it can go smashingly bad. Just keep in mind that along with those behavior assessments, kids get pegged into holes they may not fit. Okay, we've seen that happen here in America all over the place. The danger with those behavior assessments is, let's just say, people, kids, adults, we all have bad days, we all have good days. There might be a day we go to work and everything goes well and we're in a great mood. And we go to work the next day and, you know, you have a flat tire on the way and then you spill coffee all over yourself. And by the time you get to work, you're just feeling mad, you've had a bad day. And you go to do something. You're not going to do the same performance as you did with the good day. And here's what we're seeing happen in education, is that that assessment is taking a moment in time of that child's life. It could be a good day, a bad day. It could just be a day that doesn't matter, because we have those days too. But it unfairly pegs them into some sort of slot that the government or the school needs filled. Because with the funding, the money is driving the school. And this is one of the things that I found in the research. You guys are getting so much money per pupil, depending on what slot they fit in, especially for what's called the high needs. We call them special needs. It's insane. And at some point, interventions will include either medication that may or may not work for your child, or some sort of behavior therapy that you may or may not have access to. Again, how can you protect your child from things like this, from the school, if you don't know it, or they're saying you can't? Yes, you can. Remember, the government did not make you a parent, and as David just pointed out, we have to be careful using that word. God made you a parent. And He instilled in you the nurture, the protection of that child. And when any system, I don't care if it's school, health, or what, comes and tries to breach that, we need to, excuse my French, no, and hell no.
David, you have your hand up. David? You're muted.
Sorry, my little virtual hand. Just wanted to mention a couple of things. Class Charts app. It's an app called Class Charts app. It keeps tabs on pupil behaviour and creates a pie chart. The more red there is in the pie chart, the less compliant and more unruly and disruptive, allegedly, that the boy or girl is. And there's also something called Themis, which is being trialled around the world, which monitors and predicts behaviour, mood changes. And the other thing I would say, so as well as using artificial intelligence in a very, very way, language, I'd just like to point out the use of language, and something that I talk about in my presentations is the use of phrases like attention deficit. Now, attention deficit is something that the system, in its narcissistic, gaslighting kind of way, labels, it's something that sticks on the boy or girl, but in fact it's covering up for its own attention deficit, in which one teacher has 30 pupils and can only afford them between 10 and 20 seconds of quality time per class hour. There is the attention deficit. So, because we are all rabbits caught in the headlights, we all went to school and we all graduated, and graduated means gradually indoctrinated if you look up the etymology of graduated. So we've all been gradually indoctrinated into believing that however bad school is, it could be so much worse, which is just insane thinking. When I say it could be so much, in other words, you know, if we allow children released through the gates back out onto the streets, which sounds like dystopia. In fact, when the children are in recess or on holiday, you can hear the sound of screaming, laughing, joking, running, whatever, and that's the sound of joy. And when they're trapped in the classroom, you just hear silence.
And let me bring up something, if you would, let me bring up something. In the creating a culture, recess was even supposed to be reshaped. And we're seeing that happen here in America. And it's like you're removing every bit of the joy from a child at every juncture that you possibly can. What do you expect they're going to do?
I've recently read that there was a synagogue in the States that ordered buns which were rainbow, and that the bakery refused to do them. Can you ask Anne what role the churches and other bodies are having in promoting or obstructing what's going on
In education,
in the States?
but particularly in education.
Yeah.
So a question about churches in all different religions. Are they having what kind of impact might they be having on education, particularly in the States?
Yeah.
Is that particularly in the US?
Okay, I can tell you that here in America, it doesn't matter if you're in a public school, a private school, a church-run school. If you're receiving any sort of government money, especially if you have special needs, because they have funding all their own, you're going to find this shows up there as well, because we have a lot of the religions that have latched on to the Sustainable Development Goals. And the reason I know that is because if you go back and you look at the Lausanne Covenant that was brought about probably 2 or 3 decades ago, it was under the auspices of, we're going to bring all these religions together to be the hands and feet of Christ across the world. Well, now, there's nothing wrong with that, but at some point, they shifted that covenant to include not so much being Jesus anymore to the masses, but signing up with the Sustainable Development Goals, because after all, that's what Jesus would do. And I say that kind of smartly, because if you look at what the Sustainable Development Goals read, if you look at the basis of them, it is so anti-God, it's not even funny. So our church schools are being roped into this, not just from the money aspect, but from the testing aspect as well. And we're seeing this happen with our homeschools too. So yes, we can do co-op efforts for homeschool, but if you want to be totally clear of the system, you have to even get rid of those assessments.
I just wanted to point out something about Pavlov, who was mentioned, and how his kind of system of rewards and punishment, I think it underlies especially the approach to teaching special needs kids. And actually, if you go back into the history of him, he was a psychopath and he experimented on children. He literally had children strapped onto tables, and he did these experiments where he would let them salivate and observe their reactions and things. He was a sick man, and that's who they're basing it there.
So Sophie's referring to Pavlov, with Pavlov dog's experiments, saying that he was a psychopath and actually did experiments on children also.
He did.
Tying
He
them
did.
down.
Sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, he absolutely, he wasn't the only one, but he absolutely did, and a lot of people don't know that, so thank you for bringing that up. Alfred Kinsey was another one, and if you're not familiar with him, he was passed off as a doctor, he had orgasms. Well, no, they can't. It's what happened was that Kinsey was a pedophile, and he had a lot of pedophile buddies, and they would create these horrible experiments. And this was at the University of Indiana, by the way, and it got to be that, he had done so much research, he was able to prove the sexuality of everybody and anybody, and this is how boys do, this is how girls do, this is the age they start, this is the age that they don't, and everything that we knew about sexuality changed because of pedophile. Now, in America, he was friends with Rockefeller. And if you know how toxic the Rockefeller family is to the entire world, you will understand that connection. But here's what happened. Because Rockefeller was so well off and had so much influence in the United States government as well as other governments across the world, the entire penal code of the United States of America was forever changed because of Alfred Kinsey's pedophilia. This is why we have rapists who don't get just punishment, as they should, but just go sit in prison for the rest of their life. This is why we have so much problem with so many things that we're seeing present day. It's because it's built on false pretenses and false research. Havelock, Kinsey, Gates, Bailey, any of them, and all of them. They're in this together.
On that topic, Lynn, someone has a question, wondering
Yes.
whether the Sound of Freedom film is having any impact in the US because it's not available.
It's not very, okay, from what I understand, it is doing massively well here. I've not seen it, and I don't plan to, because I know that here in America, Hollywood is used as a political pulpit by the establishment. And whatever mood the establishment is in is what gets produced. Now, I'm not saying that this is a wrong thing, okay, because sometimes they will come out with something that we need to draw attention to, like sex trafficking. But however, we need to point out, yes, we're raising awareness to it now, but why wasn't it done 50 years ago? Why wasn't it done 100 years ago? Why has it not been a reoccurring theme? That's my problem with this, is because we need to talk about it, but we should have been talking about it way before now. And if what is being put out now helps start that conversation, let's do it. But let's put some teeth behind what happens to these people. Let's not just, well, yes, we're raising awareness. Let's talk about, okay, do we do justice to these people who are harming our children, or do we just let them go? Because what's going to happen, I'm afraid, is this is going to ride out its 15 minutes of fame, and then it's going to be something else that comes in, and people are going to not talk about it anymore. We need to keep these conversations going. So if our meeting today or tonight doesn't do anything other than start conversations of how we can pull together to say each other's families and our own families, then we've done a great thing. If it didn't pull that off, then I do apologize.
Can I interject something? Because as someone that has seen Sound of Freedom, it's a massive cop-out. It displays a cowardice beyond belief. And I can only assume that it's because of the sponsorship that it was given. The sponsors, this is just an assumption on my part, I don't have any evidence to back this up, but my assumption is that the sponsors, who probably aren't actually involved in human and child sex trafficking, wanted to target individuals, random individuals, and cover up institutionalised sex and child trafficking. For example, Hollywood, care systems, healthcare systems, and so you could actually argue that Sound of Freedom is dangerous misinformation. That's a very arguable point, in my opinion.
Well, thank you, David. I'm glad you brought that up because there have been several survivors of sex trafficking who have come out and said basically the same thing, that it's not telling a strong enough story.
It's an interesting question from here.
Yes.
Could this be a front to promote chipping children?
Oh, that's an excellent question, and I
Think about that. It's based on
can
our
absolutely see
set.
that. I can tell you, in fact, that in the state of Kentucky, here in the United States, I believe they have just trotted out the RFID chip for elementary students under the guise of healthcare.
And apparently someone said they heard that Tim Ballard had already made that statement.
He's saying the best way to protect your children is to get them on.
Yeah, he's saying the best way to protect them is to get the microchip.
Oh, of course. Okay. Well, hey, the argument is, well, you chip your pet, why not chip your kid? And I'm like, there's massive difference.
Yeah, well, the thing is, if you did, I'm not at all advocating tracking children whatsoever, that's not the solution at all. But you can already use a phone to do that, you don't need to have the microchips, so it's complete, there's no in the first place.
Well, we have to remember one thing about it, whether it's the chipping, the behavior assessments, the sexuality, any of this stuff. One of the ways that the us versus them mentality works so well is because you have this big group of those in power, and then you have the rest of us over here, we're kind of over here on the fringe. And somewhere in the middle, they have these influencers, okay? And one of the things that they do, as far as between those with the money and control and those with the influence over the rest of us, they'll go in and set more burdens.
Wow.
Yeah, because one of the things is, once, everyone says, oh, I'll Google it, but if you're going direct to an organisation like the Department of Education, then you can't possibly call it a conspiracy theory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And see, this is one thing that I have found in all my years of research in education, is it's easy to label me as a nut, but when I'm showing them their own website and I'm showing them their own documents, it's kind of hard to argue with that. And this is one of the things that would help you all in your fight with whoever it is you need to address. Don't go on opinion, go on law, go on their words. Use their words against them, because you will make a very good point and will make an impression, and they will know you're not to be messed with. Okay, I want to leave you all with this quote before we say farewell to
Do you have time for one or two more questions?
Oh, absolutely, yes, I thought we were done. I'm so sorry. Excuse me.
It's more than 10 words, I'll forget.
That's fair enough. David, you did a great job.
Okay, thank you.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi. So my question is, I home educate my two children.
Okay, congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. And as I was little, and I was pretty academic, but I was thrown out of school twice actually. And then I had a massive bust up with my little girl's head teacher when she was about 6 or 7, because it just disgusted me the way they were teaching them then, and we pulled her out then. But my problem is kind of the reverse situation. So now she's older and she's got other friends around her, and she wants to rebel against me, so she wants to be in school. And that's my difficulty.
Okay.
And I want to,
Okay.
so she's joined the local college where they now offer a program of GCSEs for home ed children. But I can see that it's just their way of getting their claws in. You know?
Exactly.
And they do all these things, like, for example, they have a dog I forget what they call it, but if you have any issues and you need to be, you need to be comforted, you go and see their dog, so it's their way to kind of wheedle things out of you.
That's one of those mindfulness moves. Redirecting all that energy. Well, let me give you a couple of things here, okay? I homeschool all 3 of our children. I spent 23 years in home education. We hit the mom, I don't want to be homeschooled anymore, I want to go to school. And it lasted about 5 minutes. Now, the reason I bring that up is because it's part of the growing, it's part of maturing. One of the things that helped me was I was lamenting to another homeschool mom, and I said, what do I do? Because I don't want to put them in the system, because I know the system will eat them up and chew them out. And it was given to me to ask, what do you think you're missing? And it was that conversation, my dear, that helped them to see they had it so good here at home that by the time the conversation was over, the need to go out and rebel had dried up. So try that, see if that works. And if it does, great. And if it doesn't, email me, we'll come up with something, because I can help you with this. I absolutely can. But you're right. The early get into college programs, that's getting their hooks into your kids much, much sooner than you would like. And I applaud you for being aware of that. But yeah, have some, since they're older, have some frank conversations with them. They can handle it. If you've nurtured this one, don't give it up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Can I throw something in? Try the definition, Oxford English Dictionary, of academic. And definition number 2 is of no practical use or value.
So David, then what do you, in terms of qualifications, how do you recommend kind of moving forward when you're sort of 15, 16, and you maybe, do you see no need for qualifications at all, or what are the kind of the routes that you
Artificial intelligence will be doing all the jobs will be deleted, so it's just a trap, it's a complete trap. So the only way out of that trap is to have real life skills, dexterous, practical, mechanical, electronic, artistic, creative, interpersonal. Develop all those skills and leave that academic world alone. Let artificial intelligence gobble it up.
Good advice.
Thank you.
Anyone else like to take the chair?
I'm just going to say thank you. Lynne, can you see me? Is Rhonda?
Yes, I can over here.
Is Rhonda here?
I know, I see you.
Yeah, I just want to offer heartfelt thank you from me personally for agreeing to do this wonderful presentation, and on behalf of all of our guests here. You really are an absolute treasure, and
Oh, thank you, Rhonda. Oh my goodness, you are such a doll. Thank you.
we're grateful.
I really hope that this goes on to help so many others as well who couldn't be in attendance tonight. I know Sandy, you said, was not there, but you know, I will do anything for you guys I possibly can. And you know, we had this meeting over the internet. It would be my absolute honor if we could be in person, because think about how much more we could do with the group you have there and others. We could do so much more.
We'll
So
have to,
thank you.
yeah, we'll have to try and make that happen one day.
I know,
So,
absolutely.
So
Well, thank you.
we'll hear your quotes now, and
Okay.
I'll be in touch
Now,
with you.
okay, thank you. All right, this is from a nonconformist, and I thought with the way the presentation went, that this would be absolutely wonderful to close it this way. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name because this is Russian, as Russian could be, and I did not learn to speak Russian. Okay, but here's the quote. Human beings are born with different capabilities, and if they are free, they're not equal. And if they are equal, then they are not free. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in.